Welcome to 2016 Presidential Candidate Interviews. Today I'm interviewing Joseph Bannerman. He's running as an independent. Hello, Mr. Bannerman, and welcome to the interview.
Good evening. Nice to be here.
Thank you for participating. Let's give the listeners a chance to know you, and we'll ask you some pretty easy icebreaker questions. Describe your family.
Well, I have my mother and my father, and I have an older sister who has cerebral palsy, and I have a younger sister.
Describe your employment or your work history.
I have a part-time job at Sonic Drive-In.
What are your hobbies and interests?
I like to read, write, and since I'm 16 years old, and I've been getting a lot of press I've been getting a lot of press coverage in my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama. So writing has been an affinity lately.
Okay. Do you have any favorite places to eat out?
McDonald's, Burger King, and Sonic would be my top 3 fast food restaurants.
All right. Any favorite TV shows and movies?
I love the History Channel, CNN, and the TV series Empire. That's my favorite show at the moment.
Do you have any pets?
Sir?
Do you have any pets?
My little sister has a dog, but I personally don't have any.
Okay. And the final one, name a song that describes who you are, something like maybe a motto, something that represents who you are.
Wow, that's hard. Let's see. I guess the best song that could describe me would be Survivor by Destiny's Child, simply because I've gone through so many things in my life. With my older sister having cerebral palsy, I'm diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and my cousin has just passed away from cancer about 2 months ago, just to name a few. I've just gone through so much that I would consider myself a survivor, so Survivor by Destiny's Child would be a song to describe me.
Okay. Now on to the serious questions. This is kind of like the most obvious one. Why are you running for president?
Well, basically, I was inspired to run for the presidency when my cousin passed away from cancer. She always tell me before she passed away that she wanted to make sure to remember her when I was running for president. And when she passed away, one of the things that's been helping me cope with the grief is to run for president in her memory. And also, I'm trying to draw attention to the issues that plague American society, such as the disconnect between the African American community and the police, the economy, immigration, and medical research, among many other issues.
Okay. What abilities do you bring to the office of president?
Sir?
Yeah, what abilities do you bring to the office of president?
I'm a very charismatic figure who has a level head. I'm sensible. I'm currently in student government. I have leadership positions as I'm the president of 3 clubs. I have also led a team to the Nationals tournament for Academic Bowl. I have been working on getting internships with politicians, and although I have never run for office before, I believe I possess many of the qualities that would make me a good presidential candidate.
Are there any presidents you have a favorable opinion of who you would want to be like?
Washington, Lincoln, Kennedy, Reagan, and Obama.
Okay. Are there any presidents you have a less than favorable opinion of who you would not want to be like?
bushes.
Okay. Are there any functions of government you'd like to decrease or abolish?
I believe that something that should be decreased should be the amount of interference that we spend in foreign affairs, because we have so many things going on in our own country. We have so many domestic issues, but all of these foreign issues have been drawing away attention from what's going on at home. So while this wound over here in America sits and festers, we're over here trying to put a bandage on the wound of someone overseas. And I believe that's something that we should really work on.
Are there any functions of government you'd like to add to or increase?
Welfare programs, because we have millions of empty houses, but at the same time we have millions of homeless people, or people with disabilities, or people who can't live paycheck to paycheck. So I believe that the minimum wage should be increased, and I do believe that we should work on the homeless, the mentally ill, etc., and those other groups that don't receive as much attention because it isn't newsworthy.
Describe your stance on taxation.
I believe we should lower taxes on the lower classes, and we should raise taxes on the richest percent. The richest 1% has almost half of the country's money. So they would have more than enough to share with the rest of the country. They have the greatest share of our finances, therefore they should pay the greatest share of our taxes. And I would lower taxes on business in order to bolster the economy.
Okay. Describe your stance on the abortion pro-choice issue.
I believe I'm pro-life, but I believe in exceptions for like special circumstances such as rape, incest, and the health of the mother as a child. But that's where I draw the line. Because if you kill an innocent child that cannot defend themselves simply because you were too young to take the responsibility of being a mother, if you were old enough to go through the process, that would entail you becoming pregnant, then you are old enough to take care of a child.
What role should our military play in the world? You talked a little about it earlier, but maybe if you want to be more specific, can you explain what role the military should play?
I believe that our military should only go abroad in cases such as when the United States, if there's a government hostile to us, they possess a nuclear weapon, or there are just deplorable scenes of certain kinds of, what am I looking for? That's what it is. When there are certain human rights violations that we just cannot idly sit by and watch take place, when there are certain atrocities, then we should step in for the greater good of humanity.
How would you handle immigration and border security?
I would go for a path to citizenship, and unlike some of my fellows in the race, I would not just throw my blatant disregard for the Constitution by abolishing birthright citizenship. But if you are undocumented, you should be documented as soon as possible. And if you have committed a crime, I don't believe you should stay in this country. If you commit a felony, you should be deported back to your home country. No questions asked.
Okay.
We shouldn't let a murderer come in 5 times to our country and have numerous felonies. We should not have deported him 5 times and let him come back in to kill one of our natural-born citizens.
How do you perceive the issues of race and discrimination in America? Do we still face challenges?
Yes, sir. As a 16-year-old African-American male in Birmingham, Alabama, I have seen the troubles and I experienced firsthand the effects of racism and discrimination. But what I would like to say to the Black Lives Matter is we cannot say Black Lives Matter while black-on-black crime is the highest percentage of murders and homicides in the African-American community. we can't desire progression while tolerating regression. We can't just sit here with blatant hypocrisy saying that white people are trying to kill us when in reality we're killing ourselves through murder, gang violence, and abortion. Life just does not work that way.
Okay. I don't have many African-American candidates I can interview, so is it okay if I ask some more questions along this line?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you could, as an African-American, could you maybe tell white America maybe two things that maybe they just don't quite understand about the African-American experience in America?
One thing that I've always talked about is the fact that if you're an African-American male, you are automatically born with a target on your back. You automatically have to work twice as hard to get the same amount of achievement as your white counterparts. Whatever you do, it has to be due to somebody else. It's never due to your own abilities, which you've gone through so long. I go to Ramsey High School, which is a prestigious high school, and it's one of the top schools in the nation. And people assume that I cheer on the test to get in. They don't know that I have a 4.5 GPA, a 30 on the ACT, and I take rigorous IB courses. And two, not all African-American men fit the thug stereotype. I keep my pants on my waist all the time. I go to the library. I do not use guns except when I'm in rifle team for JROTC. I'm not for the gang, thug, rap lifestyle. In fact, I actually think it makes a mockery out of our community. But basically my two things are, one, all black men are born with a target on their back, and people, even African-American women, they will never understand the pain of having to struggle through that. And our president has talked about that. And two, not all African-Americans fit the stereotypes that you see on BET or in hip-hop culture or things of that nature.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully none of that was too offensive for you.
Oh, no, sir.
Okay. Next question. What role should the federal government play in health care?
I believe that we should have a standardized healthcare system. I would basically like for it. I don't believe that if you can't afford healthcare that you should die before receiving healthcare just because you can't afford it. If America has become that inhumane of a country, if we just become that money-centric, then I would be ashamed to be an American. Sad to say. If we would let people die, it's just because they don't have enough money to pay the doctor.
Okay. What priority would you give repair of infrastructure, and what role should the federal government have in maintaining infrastructure? By infrastructure, I mean the roads, the power grid, the electric system, all that.
So my research is shown me that our infrastructure is severely outdated, and all of our power grids, highways, railways, etc. get a D- to a C+. And that needs to be changed soon, because eventually everything is just going to collapse under us, literally and figuratively. And it would be a travesty if the government could not use just a few more dollars earmarked in the budget to fix something that could be easily prevented. And we shouldn't try to just salvage what we have every 10 years. I believe every 5 years there should be a mass revitalization project for all of our infrastructure. And the federal government, not state government, should handle that.
Next question. Some people think there's a conflict of interest between gathering intelligence to fight terrorism and upholding personal liberties and privacy. What do you think is the proper balance, or is there even a conflict of interests?
I can understand the views of those who see a conflict of interest, but I personally don't see what the conflict is between sacrificing a little bit of privacy for your freedom. Had we done a bit more intelligence before 9/11, 9/11 would have been prevented. So, and if for the people who have a problem with the government doing what we already know it does, what do you have to hide, basically? Because the people who have a problem are usually the people who have something that they don't want other people to know to hide. So if they are bothered by by a slight governmental intrusion in order for the safety of 383 million Americans, well, shame on them.
This is kind of a sensitive question, but a lot of Americans consider it important. What role does faith, religion, spirituality, etc. play in your life? And what type of role would it play for you as president?
Well, I'm an ordained minister, so, I'm 16 years old. I've been ordained since I was 14, and I'm also the son of a minister. So faith plays a great role in my life. And I try not to discredit God, but I try to keep the two separate because our founders wanted the separation of church and state. We can't have Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, atheists, agnostics living under a Christian set of rules. And although we have a Judeo-Christian influence, I would tend to keep my presidency rather secular. I wouldn't disregard faith, but it wouldn't play a major role. We wouldn't resemble a theocracy.
The next question: be a forecaster. Look in the future and predict one major problem facing our country that very few people are talking about. What would you do to prepare America for it?
I believe that we're in the age of another world war, basically because if you look back at history tends to repeat itself. And the anarchy, dysfunctionality in the Arabian states over in the Middle East strongly resembles Europe at the beginning of World War I with the numerous alliances, all of the murder, all of the genocide. When you compare pre-World War I Europe to the modern day Middle East, there are striking similarities. So I believe that America should build up our army so we can have a substantial defense just in case anyone dares threaten the great United States of America.
Next question. Everybody has things they're good at and things they're not so good at. What are some of the things you're not so good at, your weaknesses, and what would you do to make up for them?
My greatest weakness is attempting to see things from the other people's point of view. Because it's not a weakness, but it's something I can improve on. Because although I'm a very open-minded, very tolerant person, my friends are very diverse. I have friends who are LGBT, atheist, agnostic, Jewish, Palestinian. I have friends from all corners of the globe. But there are sometimes where I'm, like with transgender people, for instance. I'm an LGBTQ activist, but the idea of transgender people is not that it's like I'm prejudiced, but because I don't know. It's basically I need to work on learning more and becoming even more open-minded because I don't hate anyone. I'm not prejudiced against anyone. But when I don't know something, then I may be a little bit more hesitant to be open to the idea than if I knew what it was.
Are there any other issues you would like to discuss that have not been covered yet?
Well, with the guns debate, just earlier today you had the Umpqua Community College where 10 people were murdered at class, and this is just one of the many incidents during this last administration that show why we need to push for gun control legislation. I believe we should have background checks on the mentally ill, and we should try our best to keep guns out of the hands of people who don't need to have them. I mean, you look at Fort Hood, you look at the Navy Yard, you look at Atlanta, you look at all these different colleges, Virginia Tech, Umpqua, you look at the one in Mississippi last month, the Lafayette movie theater shooting, Aurora, Sandy Hook. For God's sake, the entire city of Chicago, if we don't have enough reason to have gun control legislation, it seems it's going to take some drastic act of God for Congress to finally control guns. I know it's a Second Amendment, but it's just the right to bear arms in case of a civil insurrection or any kind of foreign invasion. It's not for us to have guns willy-nilly to just have hunting season on our fellow Americans. And another thing that I would like to talk about is the marriage debate, because like I said, I'm an LGBTQ activist, so I support same-sex marriage, and people have told me that conflicts with me being a minister, but nothing conflicts with me loving everyone the way that God has taught me to love everyone. We can't pick and choose the Bible to support certain kinds of legislation. You can't allow abortion and ban gay marriage and use the same Bible to justify both decisions. In a secular country where we're founded upon the premise of the separation of church and state, you have to look at the gay marriage debate from a civil matter and not from a religious/moral standard. If we did that, we wouldn't even have interracial marriage. Because the people in Loving versus Virginia in 1967, they used the same Bible that people are using today to object to interracial marriage. And that obviously is not illegal now. Well, in my home state, it's illegal, just not officially. And one other thing was the environment, because I do believe that human activities contribute to climate change. I do believe climate change is real. And I do support the federal regulation of greenhouse gas emissions.
All right, time for some closing remarks. In 2 minutes or less, tell us why we should vote for you.
I should be voted for simply because I have the skills, intellect, drive, and ambition necessary to correctly run the United States of America. The reason I'm running as an independent is because I'm disappointed in the lack of attention to the plight of all of the disaffected sectors of America from both sides of the aisle. The best way to solve a solution is to solve it, not to ignore it. If a 16-year-old from Alabama can see the solution, then Washington should too. Basically, everyone has an equal chance because that's the American dream. We should not focus on the upper echelons of American society and pander to their needs while neglecting the needs of the poor and downtrodden. So basically, if I am voted for, I will use greater cooperation to forge a greater nation. And that's why you should vote me, Joseph Bannerman, 2016.
Thank you for participating in the interview. Thanks again to my listeners for listening. Be sure to check back in the future for more interviews. Have a good day, and remember to keep informed and keep involved. Thanks again, Mr. Bannerman.
Thank you all. Have a blessed day.